Hi, it's Sue Greenwald here with Awakened Stories. I'm here today with Deanna Carr with the Mystical Moonlight. Hey, Deanna, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. We're going to do a Q&A follow-up from some of our previous videos, just get caught up on things and make sure people's questions are answered. So we had done one on the Chicago and Peshtigo fires a couple months ago, and all those fires happened the same day, and they were basically deliberately set, and they were set for multiple reasons: insurance money, land grabs, and to dispose of important documents. Kind of the main three, right?
Mm,
Okay. In addition to there were there were genetic experiments going on. I think you said underground. Okay.
yeah.
Okay. The fires were a cover up for that as well. So basically, all
Mm,
the evidence, like everyone's displaced, the evidence is gone, et cetera, et cetera. So people couldn't
mhm,
find out about that. Why
yeah.
is it they felt they had to do that about the experiments? Like, were they on the verge of being caught?
They were on the verge of being caught because there were a few experiments that were going awry.
Mhm.
And when we talk about experiments, we also talk about, they actually had humans that they were experimenting on. A few of them did get out, and they were trying to escape. So they did have to kind of shut down all ports in and out of their experimentation areas. Um, what's it called? Um, have you ever heard of Resident Evil?
Is it like a movie or something or a video game?
So it's pretty much about zombies. But the big corporation, they have a location and they have experimentation on people. Some of the experiments get out, and that's basically the start of the apocalypse with
The
zombies.
zombies. Okay.
And it's called the Umbrella Corp. It's pretty much the same concept. They have this one company that, in this exact area was having these experiments that were actually experimenting on multiple people, multiple creatures of different sorts, and they were trying to escape. But the problem was whatever they had in their system not only was, going to get to other people and spread, but it also brought attention back to where they were at. So instead of allowing these people and things to escape, they decided to burn down exit routes, and that way nobody could find them or get in, and along with get out.
Wow. Okay. Now, I know this is stupid because I know better intellectually, but when I think of, 1870s or whatever, I'm thinking super primitive, like they didn't have electricity like we do, lab experiment. Now we know that they have had that, but were these labs underground or were they modern like what we have now? Or
Yeah,
even,
they were modern.
yeah.
Um, think about it this way. When we talk about labs, they are usually about 10 years in advance than us. I'm sure you guys have seen like the videos, even on some of the sci-fi shows, like they have like the pop-up screens that like go in front of them and it's all touch screen, but there's nothing actually there. They were more advanced. So everything that we knew about in that time, they were 10 years ahead. So yeah, they didn't have that old school 1980s theme place, like they were technical, they did have good equipment, they did have a lot of fancy equipment.
Okay. And were the scientists, we'll call them human, or were they extraterrestrial or both?
Most of them were human.
Okay. So, because again, we like to think that the scientists have been educated by our institutions. Ha ha. Okay. So, how did these scientists get their scientific knowledge? Like, how were they recruited for these labs or whatever?
All right, so they did go to school, but when we talk about this type of experimentation, you have to be out of your mind. So they were looking for the crazies.
Okay. People that would do anything without recourse, like hurt
Hmm.
someone or an animal or a person or whatever, harm.
Yeah, they cared more about their hypothesis than what would be needed for
Okay.
hypothesis.
I got it.
So they were looking for people that had the wild inquiries. They were looking for people that would push boundaries. They were looking for people that were going to go in a direction that wasn't necessarily okay for the science community.
Got it. Okay. All right. So basically, a couple of these people that were experimented on got out. And so they decided to burn down the cities, multiple areas around that area,
Mhm.
um, and prevent their escape. And it had so many benefits for the bad guys all at the
Yep.
same time in one little package. Okay. All right.
Mhm.
All right. So, all right, let's continue the same fire. Chicago trains in 1871. Um, we talk about them transporting goods and people and all that, but we've
Mhm.
heard about the orphan trains, or I don't know if you've heard about them, but those are trains where incubated children, which we're calling the Cabbage Patch Kids, were taken around the country and distributed and put in
Mhm.
certain areas to repopulate and all that. And I'm thinking that was between 500 and 200 years ago. So, did any of the fires affect that system, the Cabbage Patch Kids and the orphan trains? Or was it a cover up for the orphan trains?
I'm getting no, it was actually a different system they were on.
Okay. So, this was just a regular train or whatever.
Well, this wasn't necessarily a regular train,
Yeah.
but the Cabbage Patch Kids were on a different track.
Okay. Interesting.
We're now when we talk about this is where it gets complex. When we talk about the underground, we kind of forget that there's levels. So underneath the train is another train.
Okay.
You get what I'm saying?
Underground.
There's another train on there's an underground train, kind of like an underground railroad
Okay.
that has moving train, and it does do the bad stuff even
Okay.
more. So the above ground train, it does bad stuff, but it's not as noticeable. Like the stuff that they're transporting might be like, you know, a few things of gold and gems. Whereas the underground, they're moving
Okay.
mass amounts.
Okay. Wow. I know when we had talked about the Great Wall of China, you said that there was something below it. There was transportation below the Great Wall. And like that was very interesting, right? And
Hmm.
the fact that well, we know that there's tunnels and transportation systems all around the world that we don't know about. So what you're
Yeah.
saying is probably the surface trains were built on top of those to kind of disguise it, maybe even, right?
Yeah, because if you, even if there's something underground,
Yeah,
depending on how low it is, a train you would hear. Trains are not quiet.
right.
So you would hear some sort of sounds. You might even feel vibrational
Vibration.
patterns.
Yeah.
So by building the railroad pretty much on top of that,
Yeah.
and they run at the same times, you have a perfect cover up because nobody knows there's anything underneath because they're already distracted by the train going by.
Right. Okay.
And they can clearly see it, they can clearly hear it, and they can feel it. So
Right.
that covers up all evidence of there being something within the
Right.
ground.
Okay. Very interesting stuff, right? So
Hmm.
when we had done the previous video, we talked about the Chicago fire, which is the most popular and well known. And then around that area that were even more, there were even more reported deaths, more than they reported,
Hmm.
Peshtigo. And then we talked a little bit about San Francisco. Um, a, a viewer had asked about the Great Fire in London in 1666. Okay. And we
Right.
don't know if that's really true or whatever, but we've heard about the Great Fire as well. So was that done as well on purpose to cover something up?
Yes.
Okay. Was it done as a land grab and an insurance grab? People would pay insurance or they didn't have insurance and then they lost their houses or their buildings.
When I asked, is it a land grab? I'm getting no. Is it a money grab? Yes. Well, how is it a money grab? Okay, this is weird. Okay. How is it a money grab? Okay. So for that one, it looks like it is actually a system. So we just talked about how there was a railroad underneath that was taking like the Cabbage Patch. It looks like that one, when I ask, is it a money grab? I get yes. When I ask, how is it a money grab? I get this kind of evil laugh and then little pictures, and it's underground. It looks like it's moving people, like they're human trafficking, but they're not using kids, they're using adults. Like they're using like men and women.
Slaves.
Hmm.
Okay. You had told us in a previous video that there was a few giants in London or in England that were being used as slaves now underground, right?
Yeah.
So when you said that, that's the first thing I thought of.
Hmm.
All right. So you're seeing that they were using people, they were moving them around.
Yeah.
And I mean, those people could be used as slaves or food, you know.
Yeah. It's not really showing, it's giving me snippets of pictures.
Yeah.
Um, and when I ask the question, I'm not really getting clear, concise answers. It's more of like an evil laugh.
Yeah, we know it's not good. Okay, we
Yeah.
we can picture the worst, but and I did not research this fire at all, right? I know we've heard about it, and look, it's hundreds of years later, right? We're still
Honestly,
talking
I don't
about it.
remember hearing it.
You haven't?
I
Oh,
don't know
come
about
on.
it. No, I don't know if it.
Okay, so we know that there was probably quite a loss of life with these fires, and of course, property, and there was probably a land grab, but that wasn't the main purpose. It was a cover up.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting. It's a cover up,
Yeah.
a seal, and it looks like it was very purposeful.
Okay.
Like there is, and I'm going from the images I'm getting, I feel like they were about to be caught and they decided to close the hole. They did, when we talk about tunnels, there's more than one exit plan. So it's not a problem if they close one gap up, you know?
Yeah.
They just go to the next one.
Right. Okay. Well, such interesting stuff. So, again, we'll tell the viewer that if they have questions, let us know, and we'll follow up with them in another Q&A.
Okay.
Thank you. So, anything else we should know about this one?
Put it in the comments. I
All
don't
right.
know.
Thank you so much for your time, Deanna. I really appreciate it.
Of course.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.